June 22nd, 1940. The salt-stung air off the English Channel whipped across the dunes near Dunkirk, carrying the acrid tang of smoke from burning oil tanks miles inland. You could hear it before you saw it, the low rumble of Luftwaffe engines slicing through the overcast sky like thunder trapped in a tin can. Sergeant Elias Thorne crouched behind a splintered sandbag wall, his Lee-Enfield rifle gripped tight, the wood warm from his palms' sweat despite the chill wind. Around him, the remnants of the 2nd Battalion, Royal Norfolk Regiment, huddled in foxholes that smelled of wet earth and fear-soured wool. Private Tommy Hargrove, barely 20, fiddled with the dial on a battered wireless set number 19, static crackling like distant gunfire. "Keep it down, lad," Thorne muttered, his voice a gravelly whisper honed from years in the trenches of the Great War. He scanned the horizon where the sea met the smoke-hazed shore. Black specks dotted the water. Destroyers and fishing trawls turned ferries, braving Stuka dives to evacuate what was left of the British Expeditionary Force. Over 300 Zeeausen men pinned against the sea by Guderian's panzers, the Wehrmacht's blitzkrieg swallowing France whole. Thorne had seen the maps in the command tent 2 days back, arrows like iron fists closing in from Calais to Abbeville. Retreat wasn't a choice, it was survival. A shell whistled overhead, exploding in a geyser of sand 50 yards off, showering them with grit. Hargrove yelped, dropping the radio handset. "Bloody hell, Sarge. They're closing in again." The boy's face was pale under the rim of his steel Brody helmet, eyes wide as he clutched his Bren light machine gun like a talisman. Thorne spat into the dirt. "Eyes front, Private. Jerry's probing, not charging yet." But he knew better. The Panzers, Mark III's with their 50mm guns, had punched through the perimeter at dawn, forcing the perimeter back a mile. Now, the beach was a chaos of khaki-clad figures, wading into the surf, officers bellowing orders over the din of Mughal spotter planes buzzing low. The sea was alive with bobbing heads, men swimming for the boats, their pack frames dragging like anchors. From the radio, a voice broke through the hiss. "All units, this is Brigade HQ. Repeat, immediate retreat to evacuation points." Codeword, Dynamo. "Fall back to the mole. Acknowledge." It was Colonel Hargreaves' clipped tones, laced with urgency. Thorne keyed the mic. "Norfolk's acknowledge. Moving out." The order rippled through the line like a chill wave, but not everyone took it straight. Lieutenant Percival Percy Langford, their platoon leader, a Cambridge man with a moustache like a broom bristle, stood up in his trench, binoculars dangling from his neck. He laughed, a sharp bark that cut through the wind. "Retreat to that slaughter on the beaches? We're the rear guard, lads. Hold the line here, and we'll buy the Tommies time." His voice carried, drawing nods from a cluster of veterans around him, men like Corporal Wilkins, who'd lost an eye at Arras and spat on running. Thorne's jaw tightened. Langford was brave, foolhardy brave, the kind that got men killed. "Sir, the colonel's clear. Panzers'll overrun us by dusk." But Langford waved him off, eyes gleaming with that officer's fire. "Nonsense, Sergeant. We've got the boys' anti-tank rifles, the 2-pounders from the battery. We'll make the bastards pay." The platoon, 30-odd souls, down from 100 after the push from the Somme, stirred uneasily. Hargrove glanced at Thorne, whispering, "He's joking, right? Laughing at retreat?" Thorne didn't answer. He could smell the diesel fumes now, faint but growing from the east. The ground trembled subtly, a vibration you felt in your boots before you heard the treads. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the smoke orange, the first German scouts appeared. Motorcycle combinations with MG-34 machine guns mounted sidecar, kicking up dust on the coastal road. Then the Panzers, sleek, angular beasts, turrets swiveling like predators' heads. A Mark IV AUSF-D rumbled into view, its 75mm KWK-37 cannon barking a round that shredded a nearby farmhouse. "Open fire!" Langford yelled, and the line erupted. Boys' rifles cracked, their 55 caliber slugs pinging harmlessly off the Panzer's sloped armor. The Bren chattered from Hargrove's position, tracers arcing toward the infantry dismounting behind. For a moment it held. A 2-pounder gun from the support battery scored a hit, black smoke belching from a Mark III's engine. But laughter turned to curses as the Luftwaffe answered. Dornier. The 17 bombers droned in from the clouds, their bomb bays yawning. The world shook as 250-kilo bombs walked the dunes, cratering sand and flesh alike. Thorne dove for cover, ears ringing, tasting blood from a bitten tongue. Shrapnel whined like angry wasps. "Fall back!" he roared, grabbing Hargrove by the collar. The boy was frozen, staring at Wilkins' body, torn open by blast. Langford was still shouting defiance, rallying a knot of men around the anti-tank gun. "Give 'em hell, boys, for king and country." But then a Stuka Ju-87 screamed down, its Jericho siren wailing like the devil's own banshee. The dive bomber's 500-kilo bomb struck true, engulfing the gun position in a fireball. Flames roared up, devouring uniforms, melting steel. Screams cut short as the inferno spread. Fed by spilled petrol from a wrecked truck, Thorne dragged Hargrove westward, the beach now a madhouse of flares and tracers. Bodies littered the sand, some twitching, others still. The sea boiled with men, destroyers' searchlights cutting the dusk like accusatory fingers. Behind them the horizon glowed. Dunkirk burning. The retreat no longer a joke, but an inferno chasing their heels. You run, heart pounding like a war drum, the weight of your pack pulling you down as shells stitch the ground. How many made it? How long until the panzers catch the stragglers? The night closes in, but the fire never stops. If you want to dive deeper into tales like this, subscribe to the channel. The flames lick the horizon. June 22nd, 1940. The dunes gave way to a churned-up wasteland of shell craters and barbed wire remnants as you stumbled westward, the salt spray mixing with the metallic tang of blood on your lips. Sergeant Elias Thorne's boots pounded the sand, each step a gritty suck against the weight of his pack, ammunition pouches, a spare clip for the Lee Enfield, and the sodden wool of his battle dress. Private Tommy Hargrove gasped beside him, the boy's Bren gun slung awkwardly over his shoulder, its barrel still hot from the futile bursts back at the line. The air hummed with the aftershock of the Stuka's dive, a vibration that rattled your teeth like loose change in a pocket. Behind you, the glow intensified, a ruddy beast devouring the night. The farmhouse where Langford had made his stand was a pyre now. Flames leaping 20 feet high, fed by the ruptured fuel drums of an abandoned Morris C8 truck. You could hear the crackle even over the wind, the pop of ammunition cooking off in the heat, sending sparks skyward like fireflies gone mad. Screams had faded into moans, then silence, swallowed by the roar. How many of the platoon were back there? Wilkins, with his one good eye and gravel voice, the lads on the 2-pounder gun, their faces blackened by cordite. Thorne didn't look back. Looking back got you killed. "Keep moving, Hargrove," he growled, his breath ragged but steady, forged in the mud of Passchendaele. The beach stretched ahead, a ribbon of chaos under the flickering searchlights from HMS Wakeful. A V-class destroyer anchored half a mile offshore. Her 4 7-inch guns thumped sporadically, lobbing shells toward the inland glow to cover the evacuation. But the Luftwaffe owned the skies. Heinkel He-111s circled like vultures, their shadows slipping across the waves. Men waded into the shallows, up to their necks, hands linked in human chains to steady against the swell. Some floated face down, packs dragging them under like millstones. A flare popped overhead, bathing everything in magnesium white. Thorne shoved Hargrove into a shallow crater, diving after him as machine gun fire stitched the sand. MG-34 bursts from German half-tracks. You knew the chatter, distinct from the British Vickers. Bullets whined, kicking up fountains inches from your helmet. "Down! Jerry's got eyes on us!" Thorne hissed, pressing his face into the wet grit. Hargrove whimpered, clutching his side where a splinter had torn through his tunic. Not deep, but blood welled dark against the khaki. The flare died, plunging you back into twilight murk. Thorn risked a peek. Figures moved in the distance, khaki and Feldgrau blurring together in the half-light. The panzers hadn't pursued en masse yet. Guderian's 19th Panzer Corps was consolidating, but scouts on Stebik Kevzided 222 armoured cars probed the flanks, their 20mm autocannons flashing. One such vehicle crested a dune 200 yards east, its turret swivelling. Thorn raised his Lee Enfield, sighting through the iron aperture. The shot cracked. 303 round punching the windscreen. The car veered, slewing into a crater before its crew bailed out, spraying fire wildly. "Run for it now!" Thorn ordered, hauling Hargrove up. You bolted, legs burning, the sea's roar growing louder. The beach was a graveyard of the half-evacuated, abandoned rifles half buried in sand, a toppled universal carrier with its tracks chewed by shrapnel, wounded men crawling toward the water on elbows and knees. An officer, Captain Ellis from the Royal Artillery, you recognized the red gorget tabs, waved a Webley revolver directing stragglers. "To the mole! East Pier! Boats there! Move, damn you!" The mole, that cursed breakwater at Dunkirk harbour, a wooden jetty splintered by bombs, where the real evacuation bottlenecked. Thorn angled toward it, skirting a cluster of French poilus, tired zouaves in horizon blue, their chasseurs' rifles slung low, eyes hollow from the fall of Lille. Language barriers didn't matter. Fear was universal. A shared nod, and they fell in behind, a ragged line of 20-odd souls weaving through the debris. But the night wasn't done testing you. A low drone built from the south, Junkers Ju 88s, the Schnell bombers, slipping in under radar at wave-top height. Their engines throbbed like angry hearts, twin Jumo 2-in-1s propelling the beasts at 300 miles per hour. Bombs whistled down, 50-kilo SC-50s, skipping across the water before detonating in geysers that drenched the shore. One struck near the mole's end, splintering timber and hurling a launch. HMT Graffiti, a requisitioned trawler, onto the rocks. Men screamed as the hull cracked, fuel igniting in a whoosh that lit the harbour like a torch. Thorn hit the sand hard, the blast wave slamming him like a fist. Ears ringing, he tasted salt and oil. Hargrove was beside him, coughing, his helmet askew. "Sarge! The boats! They're going up!" Indeed. Secondary explosions rippled along the pier. A destroyer, HMS Grafton, taking a hit amidships, her magazine cooking off in brilliant flashes. The air filled with the stench of burning rubber and cordite, mingling with the fishy reek of the harbour. You push up, staggering toward the smoke-wreathed jetty. Officers from the Royal Navy barked from motor launches, their Aldis lamps signalling. "Form lines! No pushing!" But panic ruled. Men surged forward, trampling the wounded, fists flying over the last spots on the boats. Thorn muscled through, grabbing a rung on a boarding net, dangling from a drifter. Hargrove clung to his belt, the boy's face a mask of soot and terror. A shell from an unseen U-boat offshore, U-48 perhaps, lurking in the shallows, slammed the water nearby. The concussion numbing your limbs. Halfway up, a cry from behind. French soldiers cut off by a fresh bomb crater, flailing in the surf. Thorn hesitated, the net slick under his fingers. Duty pulled one way, survival the other. "Hold on, lad," he told Hargrove, then yelled down to the zouaves. But the launch pulled away, engines churning foam, leaving shadows in the water. As you crested the rail, collapsing onto the deck amid cursing sailors, the horizon erupted anew. Inland, the Panzer's advance quickened. Tracers from 80mm flak guns, repurposed as anti-tank weapons, arcing toward the perimeter. The retreat was fracturing, dynamo teetering on the edge. How far would the fire spread before dawn? And what waited in the Channel's cold embrace? Shadows over the Channel. June 22nd, 1940, transitioned into the witching hours as the small drifter, HMT Lady Lou, a weathered herring boat pressed into service, chugged through the ink-black waters of the English Channel. Sergeant Elias Thorne sprawled against a coil of rope on the crowded deck, his lungs burning from the acrid bite of diesel exhaust and the lingering smoke from Dunkirk's pyres. The boat's single four-cylinder engine thrummed beneath you, a steady pulse against the choppy swell that slapped the hull like impatient fists. Private Tommy Hargrove huddled nearby, knees drawn up, his Bren gun cradled like a child, the metal still warm. Blood from his side wound had soaked through a hasty field dressing, staining the deck planks dark. Around you, the deck was a press of sodden khaki, 40 men squeezed onto space meant for 10, their faces gaunt masks lit by the faint glow of a shielded binnacle. French sailors from the trawler's crew muttered in low-country dialects, heaving on the wheel while Royal Navy ratings, petty officers in oilskins, barked orders to keep the human cargo from capsizing the vessel. "Steady on, no shifting weight, or we'll all feed the fish," one yelled, his voice cutting through the wind that whipped salt spray across your cheeks. The air smelled of brine, vomit, and the faint, oily reek of U-boat diesel lurking unseen below. Thorne wiped his face with a grimy sleeve, eyes scanning the horizon where Dunkirk's fires painted the sky, a bruised crimson. The glow receded slowly, but the rumble of artillery followed, like a predator's growl. 80 deep millimeter guns from the German coastal batteries at Gravelines, lobbing shells that arced high before plunging into the sea with muffled booms. One such salvo straddled a sister ship half a mile off. The wakeful silhouette erupted in a flash, her boiler exploding in a geyser of steam and debris. Cheers turned to curses as fragments rained down, pinging off the Lady Lou's rails. "Jerrys don't quit, do they?" Hargrove whispered, his voice small against the night's vastness. The boy shivered, not just from the cold. Shock was setting in, his lips pale under the stubble. Thorne clapped a hand on his shoulder, feeling the tremor through the wool. "Not tonight, lad, but we're out. That's something." Yet doubt gnawed at him. Operation Dynamo was a miracle on paper, but at sea it was a gamble. Over 800 vessels, destroyers like HMS Venomous, minesweepers, lifeboats, ferrying men across 21 miles of wolf-infested water, all under the Reichsair umbrella. The first warning came as a distant drone, faint over the waves' sigh. You felt it in your gut before you heard it. The Messerschmitt Bf 109 is, escort fighters slicing the clouds at 350 miles per hour, their Daimler-Benz engines a high-pitched snarl. Then the bombers, squadrons of Heinkel He 111s from Jagdgeschwader 26 wheeling in from Ostende. Flares burst starward from the convoy, turning the sea to molten silver, and the sky ignited with tracers from Oerlikon 20mm guns on the larger ships. "Air attack! Take cover!" The cry rippled across the deck as the Lady Lou's crew scrambled for the twin Lewis guns, mounted fore and aft. Thorne shoved Hargrove behind a stack of life jackets, drawing his Lee Enfield close. No good against planes, but habit died hard. The Heinkels dove in echelons, their bomb bays disgorging SC-250s that skipped across the water like deadly stones. Explosions bloomed nearby. A paddle steamer, SS Gracie Fields, caught a direct hit, her decks erupting in flames that reflected off the waves like hell's mirror. Screams carried on the wind, thin and desperate, as men leapt into the oil-slicked sea. One bomb hurtled toward the Lady Lou, whistling like a falling anvil. The deck tilted as the helmsman wrenched the wheel, the hull groaning under the strain. It missed by yards, the concussion slamming you against the rail, water surging up in a foaming wall that drenched everyone to the bone. Shrapnel from the near miss whined past, shredding a sail and claiming a French sailor, his body slumped over the gunwale, her blood mixing with the spray. Chaos reigned as the attack pressed. BF-109s stooped on the escorts, cannon fire raking the destroyer HMS Malcolm's Bridge, sparks flying from her director tower. The Lady Lou zigzagged wildly, engines straining at full throttle, her propeller churning foam. Thorne tasted bile, the boat's pitch throwing him against Hargrove. "Hold fast," he grunted, gripping a stanchion. The boy nodded, eyes wide, but his grip on the Bren faltered, the weapon sliding toward the scuppers. A second wave hit harder. Junkers Ju-87 Stukas, their fixed landing gear casting spider shadows as they peeled off from 100 feet. The Jericho sirens wailed, a psychological knife twisting in your bowels, louder than any shell. One dove on a cluster of drifters astern, bombs straddling the lead boat. She disintegrated in a roar of splintered wood and fire, debris pattering like hail. The shockwave rocked the Lady Lou, capsizing 2 men overboard. "Man overboard!" a rating shouted, but there was no stopping. The convoy steamed on, leaving wakes of the lost. Thorne lunged for the Bren as it teetered, securing it with his boot. Hargrove retched over the side. The sea's cold seeping into his bones. "I can't, Sarge. It'll never end." Thorne pulled him back, the wind tearing at their words. "It will, Tommy. Dawn's coming. RAF'll chase 'em off." But even as he said it, doubt flickered. The Spitfires and Hurricanes were stretched thin, fuel and pilots rationed after the day's maulings over the beaches. As the Stukas climbed for another pass, anti-aircraft fire intensified from the screen, pom-poms from HMS Sabre chattering like furious typewriters, tracers weaving a deadly net. One BF-109 caught fire, spiraling into the sea in a trail of smoke, its pilot's chute blooming like a white flower before bullets shredded it. Vengeance, but fleeting. A Stuka's 30mm cannon barked, stitching the Lady Lou's deck. Bullets chewed the rail beside you, one grazing Thorne's arm, a hot line of fire that drew blood, but no cry. He clamped down, ignoring it, focusing on the boy. The attack ebbed as the Germans banked east, ammo spent or fuel low. The convoy reformed, a ragged phalanx limping toward Dover's cliffs, invisible but promised. Thorne bandaged his arm with a strip from his shirt, the sting sharpening his senses. Hargrove slept fitfully against him, exhaustion claiming the young face. But peace was illusory. U-boat periscopes ghosted the waves, and E-boats, Schnellboot like S-26, prowled from Calais, their torpedoes waiting. You stare into the dark, the fires of Dunkirk a fading ember astern. Safety beckons across the water, but the channel holds its breath. What shadows stir below, and will the dawn bring respite or ruin? Whispers from the depths. The pre-dawn hush settled over the English Channel like a shroud, broken only by the rhythmic slap of waves against the Lady Lou's hull and the laboured wheeze of her engine. Sergeant Elias Thorne shifted against the damp deck, his wounded arm throbbing under the makeshift bandage, a dull pulse that matched the ache in his temples. The air hung heavy with the chill of 3 a.m., June 23rd, 1940, carrying the faint, acrid whisper of oil slicks from sunken ships drifting on the current. Private Tommy Hargrove stirred beside him, murmuring in his feverish sleep, his face slick with sweat despite the cold. The boy's wound had worsened in the hours since the air attack, fever burning hot, turning his skin clammy under Thorne's probing fingers. You lie there, back against the gunwale, the stars above pricked through thinning clouds like distant shell bursts. The convoy stretched ahead and astern, a ghost fleet of silhouettes, destroyers like HMS Windsor cutting sharp wakes, flanked by trawlers and whalers bobbing like cork in the swell. Over 200 vessels tonight alone, Admiralty dispatches crackled over the wireless earlier, dynamo pulling men from the jaws of hell, one fragile load at a time. But fragility was the Channel's curse. Thorne's eyes strained into the black, searching for the telltale feather of a periscope or the white slash of an E-boat's bow wave. U-boats prowled these waters, wolfpacks from Admiral Donitz's BDU, Their types heavy seas, silent hunters with G7A torpedoes coiled in tubes. A low hiss cut the quiet. Steam venting from a nearby mine layer, the MSR-29, her crew mending damage from the Stuka strafing. French and British voices mingled in murmurs, tales of the beaches exchanged like contraband cigarettes. Saw a panzer roll right over a trench, squashed 'em flat, a Royal Marine grunted to a weary fusilier. Laughter, brittle and short, echoed faintly, but Thorne stayed silent. His mind replayed Langford's last stand. The lieutenant's broom-bristle moustache twisted in defiance, then lost to the flames. Foolish pride, or the spark that kept a man fighting? Thorne rubbed his stubbled jaw, tasting salt and regret. How many Norfolks made the boats? 10? 5? The platoon ledger would be short come morning. Hargrove twitched awake with a gasp, eyes wild in the dim light. "Sarge, the water. It's pulling." Thorne steadied him, pressing a canteen to the boy's cracked lips, stale water, rationed to sips. "Easy, Tommy. Just the tide. We're halfway across." But the words felt hollow. The Lady Lou ploughed on at 8 knots, her compass needle wavering toward Dover's invisible cliffs 10 miles off. Radar was blind in the murk. ASDIC pings from the escorts, the only early warning against submerged threats. Then it came, a distant thud, muffled like a depth charge far off, followed by a cheer from the lead destroyer. "U-boat kill!" a rating crowed. But Thorne's gut twisted. Cheers invited hubris. Minutes later, the wireless operator on the Lady Lou, a lanky signals corporal named Ellis, clambered from the tiny radio shack, face pale under his helmet. "Message from flagship, sir," he reported to the trawler's captain, a grizzled RNVR lieutenant named Hargreaves. No relation to the colonel, Thorne noted wryly. "Contact bearing 270, U-46 sighted. Convoy to evasive, zigzag pattern, speed 12 knots. The deck erupted in controlled frenzy. Sailors scrambled to stations, the engine telegraph clanging to full ahead. The Lady Lou shuddered as her propeller bit deeper, hull groaning against the strain. Thorne pulled Hargrove to his feet, slinging the Bren over his own shoulder. "On your pins, lad. Might need to swim yet." The boy nodded weakly, gripping the rail as the boat heeled into a sharp turn. Spray bursting over the bow like machine gun bursts. The convoy scattered like startled birds, destroyers laying smoke screens, dense white clouds billowing from pots on their sterns, veiling the sea in fog. But the U-boat was awake. From the depths, U-46, under Capitan Lieutenant Engelbert Endras, veteran of Scarpa Flow, unleashed her pack. Twin fans of torpedoes sliced the water at 40 knots, electric G7E models leaving no wake, guided by hydrophones pinging the convoy's screws. The first strike hit a mile astern, a collier, SS Crested Eagle, her side erupting in a column of fire and steam. The explosion rolled across the waves like thunder, orange light flickering on faces turned to watch. Debris rained, timbers, bodies splashing into the sea where swimmers thrashed amid the oil. "Hard a starboard!" Hargreaves bellowed from the bridge, the wheels spinning under calloused hands. The Lady Lou yawed violently, deck tilting 30 degrees, men sliding across planks slick with seawater. Thorne braced against the bulwark, Hargrove vomiting over the side as the boat plunged into a trough. You feel the vulnerability then, exposed on this wooden speck, the channel's cold maw waiting below. Depth charges boomed from HMS Valiant, the destroyer's Y-guns hurling 300-pound ashcans in patterns, bubbles racing past the hull like vengeful fish. But the wolves were multiple. A second torpedo broached near the flank, a V-class destroyer, HMS Grafton. No, wait. Her sister Grafton had gone up at Dunkirk. This was HMS Grenade. The fish struck amidships, the bow lifting skyward in a roar of rending metal. Flames shot 100 feet, illuminating the horror. Her crew catapulted into the sea, some aflame, others tangled in nets. The grenade listed, guns firing wildly even as she sank, her hedgehog mortar launching projectiles that arced uselessly. Alarms wailed across the Lady Lou, klaxons piercing the night like screams. Ellis yelled from the wireless, "E-boats inbound! From Calais, 3, maybe 4. Schnellboote, the Kriegsmarine's Mosquito fleet, S-24 class with 40mm Bofors and torpedoes, skimming at 40 knots on the surface. Their diesels growled over the waves, searchlights stabbing the smoke like accusatory fingers. Tracers from their MG-151 cannons laced the dark, stitching a trawler ahead. She veered, hull-holed, but a torpedo from S-27 finished her. A gout of water, then flames as her magazine went up. Thorne shoved Hargrove below decks into the fish hold, now a makeshift shelter crammed with wounded. "Stay put!" The boy clutched his side, whispering, "Don't leave me, Sarge." But duty called topside. Thorne grabbed a discarded Sten gun from a fallen rating, submachine gun, 9mm rounds for close work, and climbed back as the Lady Lou's Lewis guns chattered to life. Bullets whined overhead, one clipping the mast with a crack. An E-boat closed to 200 yards, her bow wave foaming white, guns blazing. The captain spun the wheel again, the trawler dodging a shell that ploughed the sea beside her. Thorne fired a burst from the Sten, the recoil jarring his wounded arm, rounds sparking off the E-boat's armor. Useless, but it felt like fighting back. A destroyer escort, HMS Windsor, turned to engage, her 4-7-inch guns thundering. Shells screamed, one slamming the Schnellboot's bridge. She swerved, trailing smoke, but her torpedo launched, a dud, splashing harmlessly short. The melee peaked in chaos, depth charges bubbling, E-boats weaving through smoke, U-boats circling below. The Lady Lou took a grazing hit from cannon fire, splinters shredding the deckhouse, wounding the signals corporal in the leg. He screamed, blood pooling black. Thorne dragged him to cover, tying a tourniquet with his belt. "Hang on, Ellis. Dover's close." The cliffs loomed now, a darker shadow against the paling sky, lighthouses winking like hesitant beacons. As the E-boats broke off, peeling east under RAF dawn patrols, Spitfires from Biggin Hill streaking low, the convoy coalesced. Losses mounted, 5 ships gone, hundreds adrift in rafts. Thorne slumped beside Hargrove in the hold, the boys breathing shallow. Fever dreams gripped him, muttering of home, of the beaches. Thorne wiped his brow. The first light of dawn creeping through portholes, gilding the blood-streaked deck. But victory was Pyrrhic. Reports filtered in. Jerry's panzers rolling unopposed now, Dunkirk's perimeter collapsing. The BEF saved, but France bleeding out. You wonder as the engine steadies toward harbour, if the fire's embers will cross the channel, or if new shadows rise from England's shore. What price for this dawn, and who pays it next? Dawn's Reckoning. June 23, 1940, broke grey and reluctant over the white cliffs of Dover, the first slivers of sun piercing the mist like hesitant bayonets. Sergeant Elias Thorne stood at the Lady Lou's rail as the trawler nosed into the harbour, her hull scarred by shrapnel pocks and oil-smeared decks groaning under the weight of her human cargo. The air shifted from the channel's brine-laced chill to the earthy tang of English soil, coal smoke from the docks, the faint rot of fishing nets piled high, and the sharp ozone bite of rain threatening from the south. You could hear the clamour before the outlines sharpened, cranes creaking, ambulances wailing on the quay, and the barked orders of dockhands in rolled sleeves, their faces etched with the exhaustion of endless nights. Thorne's arm burned under the crusted bandage, a dull fire that paled against the ache in his chest. Private Tommy Hargrove lay below in the fish hold, his fever unbroken, breaths coming in shallow rasps that fogged the chill air. The boy had clung to life through the night's gauntlet, Stukas shrieking, torpedoes blooming like deadly flowers. But now, with safety in sight, his grip faltered. Thorne had checked him at first light, pressing a damp cloth to his forehead, whispering gruff encouragements drawn from memories of his own lads, lost in 18. "Hang on, Tommy. Home's here. Mum's waiting with tea and scolding. The Lady Lou nudged against the pier with a dull thud, fenders squeaking as ropes snaked out to cleats. Royal Navy tugs idled nearby, their crews watching with quiet respect. No fanfare for the small boats that bore the brunt. Over 338. 00 souls pulled from Dynamo's maw, Admiralty tallies whispered among the officers, but each ship carried its ledger of ghosts. Thorn shouldered the Bren gun, its weight a familiar anchor, and helped haul stretchers up the gangway. Hargrove went first, two burly orderlies from the RAMC lifting him onto a canvas litter, his face ashen under the stubble, eyes fluttering against the light. "Gunshot graze, fever setting in," Thorn reported to the medical officer, a harried major with a clipboard and a stethoscope dangling like a noose. The man nodded curtly, jotting notes amid the chaos, wounded streaming ashore, bandaged figures limping toward waiting lorries bound for field hospitals in Kent. "We'll sort him. You too, Sergeant. Get that arm seen." But Thorn waved it off, eyes scanning the crowd for familiar faces. Where were the rest of the Norfolks, the 2nd Battalion's colours, tattered but defiant, fluttered from a makeshift HQ tent on the docks? But the ranks were thin. Whispers circulated, entire companies unaccounted for, swallowed by the dunes or the sea. You push through the throng, the ground solid under your boots for the first time in days. A blessed firmness after the Channel's treacherous roll. Hot tea sloshed from billy cans, handed out by WVS ladies in aprons. Their smiles tight-lipped against the horror stories unfolding. "God bless you, lads," one murmured, pressing a biscuit into Thorn's palm. It crumbled dry on his tongue, tasting of home and ash. Reports filtered in from the wireless vans parked along the harbour. The perimeter at Dunkirk held through the night but barely. Guderian's panzers, now the spearhead of Army Group A, had rolled into the abandoned town by midday, their Maybach engines rumbling over cobblestones slick with oil from bombed tanks. The Luftwaffe claimed 200 RAF kills, but hurricanes from No. 501 Squadron had bloodied their noses at dawn, downing a dozen Messerschmitts over the cliffs. Thorn found a spot on a crate stack overlooking the water, lighting a woodbine with trembling fingers. The smoke curled bitter, mingling with the harbour's fog. Langford's laugh echoed in his mind, that sharp bark of defiance, mocking the retreat as cowardice. "Hold the line," the lieutenant had said, eyes alight with the fire of empire. And it burned them all, the Stuka's bomb turning the gun position to cinders, screams lost in the roar. Thorn exhaled slowly, watching a hospital ship, the St. David, steam out laden with the broken, French, British, even a few Belgians plucked from the wrecks. Consequences rippled like the wakes from departing ferries. France's defences cracked wide. Paris a fortnight from falling, the BF bloodied but breathing, its rifles and spirit salvaged for the island fight ahead. A runner from Battalion HQ approached, a young signals lad with ink-stained cuffs. "Sergeant Thorn, Colonel Hargreaves wants a word. Debrief in the tent." Thorn stubbed out the cigarette, rising with a wince. The tent smelled of wet canvas and stewed tea, maps pinned to trestles showing the miracle's scope, arrows reversed from encirclement to exodus. The colonel, pipe clenched in teeth yellowed by stress, clasped Thorn's good hand. "Heard about your platoon, Langford. Brave idiot. Cost us dear, but bought time for the mole." His voice cracked slightly, eyes distant. "Hargrove make it?" Thorn nodded. "Fever's got him, sir, but fighting." The colonel sighed, tapping the map. "Whole divisions like that. Jerry's laughing now, blitzkrieg unbroken. But we live to spit back." Outside, church bells tolled from Dover's spires, a defiant peal against the invasion fears. Churchill's voice crackled from a radio in the corner, broadcast from London. "We shall fight on the beaches. We shall never surrender." Words like bullets, Thorn thought, stealing the spine. By afternoon, Thorn was processed, arm stitched by a surgeon who cursed the Luftwaffe under his breath, a Purple Heart pinned later in the week for the ledgers. Hargrove pulled through, the fever breaking in a quarantine ward, his first words a mumbled thanks over bully beef. But the burn scars lingered, nightmares of flames licking the dunes, the sea's cold pull. Thorne wrote letters home that night in a billet near the cliffs, to his wife in Norwich, sparing the horrors, emphasizing the dawn. The retreat, mocked by some, had forged survival from slaughter. Panzers might cross the channel, but the fire in men's hearts burned hotter. As evening fell, Thorne stood on the cliffs, wind tugging his tunic, gazing toward France's shadowed coast. Embers glowed faint across the water. Dunkirk's ruins, smouldering under German boots. The war's first chapter closed in pyres and whispers, but the book was thick. You wonder, boots planted on English soil, if laughter at retreat was folly or fuel, and what inferno awaits the next order. The horizon holds its breath, promising more shadows, more dawns bought in blood.